The restaurant was alive with the hum of quiet conversations, the soft clinking of glasses, and the aroma of dishes that Ethan couldn't even pronounce, let alone afford on a regular night. But tonight was different. Tonight, thanks to a voucher Lily's school had sent home, he had decided to treat his daughter to something special, even if he felt entirely out of place in his worn jacket and the scuffed shoes that had carried him through long shifts at the garage. Lily sat across from him, her small hands busy with a coloring book she insisted on bringing, her tongue peeking from the corner of her mouth as she filled in the lines with bright crayons, humming happily as though she hadn't noticed that the other children in the restaurant were dressed in little suits and satin dresses, and Ethan smiled, grateful that she was too young to feel the sting of not fitting in. But his attention kept drifting to the far side of the room, where a woman sat at a table set for two, her elegance unmistakable as the dim light caught the shimmer of her midnight blue dress and the soft waves of her hair that had clearly been styled for an evening meant to impress. She looked the part of someone waiting for romance, her posture poised, her expression carefully neutral, but Ethan saw the subtle signs beneath the polished exterior, the way her eyes flicked toward the entrance each time the doors opened, the hopeful curve of her lips that faltered when another couple appeared, and the growing stillness in her shoulders as the minutes dragged on. She reached for her glass, sipping slowly, then glanced at her phone as if willing it to buzz with a message that might explain the delay, though each time she set it down, her smile grew thinner. Ethan tried not to stare, but Lily noticed too, tugging at his sleeve with the blunt honesty only a child could carry. "Daddy," she whispered, her big eyes fixed on the woman. The pretty lady looked sad. Did her friend forget her? Ethan's heart squeezed at the question, and when he followed Lily's gaze again, he couldn't shake the pull to do something, anything, though it wasn't like him to intrude on strangers. Still, there was something about the quiet loneliness etched into the woman's face that reminded him of his own long nights after his wife had passed, of dinners eaten in silence with only the sound of Lily's giggles to fill the emptiness, and before he could talk himself out of it, he pushed back his chair and walked over. Clearing his throat gently so as not to startle her, he offered a tentative smile and said, "Excuse me, I don't mean to bother you, but, are you all right?" The woman blinked, startled at first, then seemed almost relieved that someone had broken the silence surrounding her. For a moment, her carefully guarded expression cracked, and a small, shaky laugh escaped her lips. "I think I've been stood up," she admitted, her tone light but edged with the vulnerability of the truth, and Ethan's heart ached at the sight. He glanced back at Lily, who was watching curiously, then returned his gaze to the woman with the same warmth he always used when soothing his daughter. "Well," he said with a hint of humor in his voice, "if it makes you feel any better, Lily and I have way too many breadsticks at our table. You're welcome to join us." For a moment, surprise flickered across her face, as though no one had ever offered her such a simple kindness before, and then her lips curved into a genuine smile, one that softened the sadness in her eyes. "I'd like that," she said quietly, and just like that, the evening began to change, not only for her, but for Ethan and Lily too, in ways none of them could yet imagine. Sophia had expected her night to end in quiet humiliation, the kind that left an ache in the chest long after the candles burned out, but instead she found herself sitting across from a man whose presence felt disarmingly steady and kind, with a little girl who looked at her as though she had been part of their world all along, and as the waiter cleared away the extra place setting from her empty table, she felt the weight of being abandoned slowly lift. Ethan introduced himself simply, his voice calm, his smile gentle, and then introduced Lily, who immediately leaned over to show Sophia her latest crayon masterpiece, a crooked rainbow with a smiling sun in the corner, and Sophia found herself laughing, not the careful, rehearsed laugh she usually offered at charity galas or business dinners, but a genuine laugh that bubbled up unexpectedly and warmed her chest. Their dinner was nothing extravagant, just shared breadsticks and pasta dishes chosen from the modest end of the menu, but to Sophia it felt like the most refreshing meal she had ever had, because Ethan wasn't trying to impress her or flatter her, he was simply there, listening when she spoke, asking questions about her favorite books and places she liked to visit, and never once making her feel the need to hide behind her polished exterior. She had gone on dates with men who threw around their wealth and power, ordering the finest wines and speaking of their connections as though love could be bought with a last name or a credit card, but here was a single dad in a faded jacket, carefully cutting up Lily's food before eating his own, laughing softly when his daughter smeared sauce on her cheek, and for reasons Sophia couldn't explain. Her heart was moved more in this quiet corner than in any ballroom she had ever entered. Lily, ever curious and unfiltered, suddenly asked, "Are you gonna be my daddy's friend now?" And Sophia nearly choked on her sip of water, startled by the question, but when she looked at Ethan, his ears had turned pink, and she saw the way he was about to gently scold his daughter for being too forward. Before he could, Sophia smiled, soft and sincere, and said, "I'd like to," and Lily grinned with the triumph of a matchmaker who knew exactly what she was doing. Still, underneath Sophia's warmth and easy laughter was the secret she carried, the truth that she wasn't just a woman on a bad date but the heir to a billion-dollar business empire, someone whose last name was whispered with awe in financial circles, and yet she couldn't bring herself to admit it, not tonight, not when Ethan looked at her with unguarded kindness rather than calculation. As the evening drew to a close and Ethan insisted on walking her to her car, Sophia felt a pang of guilt when she saw his eyes flick curiously to the sleek, understated black luxury vehicle waiting for her, but he said nothing, only wished her a safe drive home, and as she slid into the leather seat, she realized her heart was pounding in a way it hadn't in years. For the first time, she wasn't thinking about the empire she managed, the endless expectations of her family, or the public eye that followed her every move. She was thinking about a humble mechanic and his little girl, and how, against every expectation, she wanted to see them again. In the weeks that followed their unexpected dinner, Sophia found herself slipping into Ethan and Lily's world in ways she never could have imagined, exchanging glittering gala nights and high-profile meetings for evenings at his modest garage where the scent of motor oil clung to the air and Lily's laughter filled the corners like sunshine spilling through a cracked window. And though her driver often raised an eyebrow at her insistence on being dropped off several streets away so no one would connect her presence to the single father's shop, she didn't care. What mattered was the way Ethan's face lit up when he saw her carrying 2 cups of coffee, or how Lily ran into her arms as though she were already part of their family. Sometimes, Sophia sat cross-legged on the oil-stained floor, helping Lily with math homework or drawing pictures on scrap paper, and other times she stood quietly at the garage door, watching Ethan's steady hands as he worked beneath the hood of a car, marveling at how much strength and gentleness could exist in one man. Yet as their bond grew stronger, so did the weight of the truth she hadn't told, pressing heavier on her chest each time Ethan asked about her family or her job, his tone casual but tinged with curiosity. She always dodged, offering half-answers like, "I help with the family business," never daring to reveal that her business was a billion-dollar empire that kept her face in magazines and her name in boardrooms. One evening, when the sky burned orange and gold as the sun dipped low, Ethan walked her to her car again, wiping grease from his hands with a rag, and he chuckled lightly as he glanced at the sleek black vehicle she always insisted was just a company car. "You never really talk about what you do," he said, his voice teasing but edged with genuine interest, and Sophia's heart thudded painfully because she longed to tell him everything but feared the shift it would cause in the fragile, beautiful trust they had built. She forced a laugh, brushing off the question with the practiced ease of someone who had been hiding her truth for years. "It's complicated," she murmured, "just family business," and she quickly changed the subject by asking about Lily's upcoming school recital. Ethan, though clearly aware she was deflecting, respected her boundaries, simply nodding and telling her proudly how excited Lily was to sing on stage, and that simple trust cut Sophia deeper than any interrogation could have, because he never pushed, never pried, never looked at her as though he was calculating what he could gain from her, and she realized she was falling for him. Not in the guarded way she had entertained flings before, but with a terrifying, exhilarating depth that made her wonder if perhaps she had finally found someone who saw her, not her last name. Later that night, lying awake in her penthouse surrounded by silence, she replayed Ethan's smile, Lily's giggles, and the warmth of belonging she had felt in their small, cluttered world, and for the first time in years, she questioned whether her carefully built empire was worth as much as the chance to be truly loved. The truth came crashing down one morning when Ethan stopped at the corner store to pick up milk and a pack of crayons for Lily, and his eyes froze on a glossy magazine displayed by the register, the bold headline declaring, "Heiress Sophia Hale poised to inherit billion-dollar empire," with a photo of her smiling flawlessly in a designer gown, and in that instant, the woman he thought he knew, the one who knelt on oil-stained floors with Lily, who laughed over shared pasta, who sat in his garage, sipping cheap coffee from a paper cup, suddenly looked like a stranger. That evening, when Sophia arrived at the garage with her usual warm smile and a bag of Lily's favorite cookies, Ethan held up the magazine, his voice quiet but laced with hurt as he asked, "Why didn't you tell me?" Sophia's breath caught as guilt washed over her, the secret she had clung to unraveling in a single moment, and she whispered, "Because I didn't want this, us, to be about money. People always see the billionaire, never me, and for once, I wanted someone to look at me the way you did." Ethan listened, torn between anger at being deceived and the understanding that her fear was real, because he knew what it was like to be judged for what you had or didn't have, yet the sting of her silence weighed heavy. "Sophia," he sighed, running a hand through his hair, "I don't care about the money, I care that you didn't trust me enough to be honest." Her eyes shimmered with tears as she stepped closer, her voice breaking with emotion. "Then let me prove it. Let me stand by you the way you stood by me when I was left alone at that restaurant. I don't want the empire, the attention, any of it, I just want you and Lily, if you'll let me." For a long, aching moment, silence stretched between them, broken only by the faint hum of the garage lights, until Lily padded in from the back, clutching her teddy bear, her little voice cutting through the tension as she asked, "Daddy, can she stay?" Ethan looked down at his daughter, then at Sophia, and in their eyes he saw two people who had both chosen him, not for what he could give, but for who he was. Slowly, a smile curved across his face, weary but genuine, and he whispered, "Yeah, she can stay." Relief and joy flooded Sophia's expression as tears slipped down her cheeks, and she pulled both Ethan and Lily into her arms, holding them as though she would never let go. In that embrace, the barriers of wealth and circumstance fell away, and what remained was something far more precious, the simple, steadfast love of a family being built not by blood or status, but by choice. For the first time in her life, Sophia wasn't the heiress or the billionaire, she was just a woman who had found home, and Ethan realized that sometimes the greatest fortune wasn't measured in money at all, but in the hearts that chose to stay.